All right. Ryan, you there? Okay.
Hey.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Pregnancy After 40 podcast. I am your host, Michelle Johnson. And today we have guest Ryann Kipping. She's got some really good information to help women who are trying to conceive, if you're currently pregnant, and even postpartum. So she's here to talk about nutrition and health, how it affects your body, and how you can help your body to actually conceive, actually make the most of your pregnancy, nutrition wise, and postpartum as well. So Ryann is just going to read her bio. She's a clinically trained registered dietitian nutritionist. She is also the author of the Feel-Good Pregnancy Cookbook, and she is the founder of the Prenatal Nutritionist, which is a virtual nutrition private practice where she focuses on preparing women for pregnancy and conquering nutrition during and after pregnancy. So she helps women feel confident in their ability to properly nourish a growing baby through a real food approach. She also is the founder of the Prenatal Nutrition Library, which we'll speak about, which is an online community for evidence-based nutrition information for before and during pregnancy. She creates content daily on her Instagram pages. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you are joining us live, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll be sure to ask them to Ryann. But Ryann, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So always excited to bring good information here to everyone. So we're just going to start off how you became involved in pregnancy related nutrition.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in nutrition, and how I got specifically interested in prenatal nutrition really started in college when I first had my first class on the life cycle nutrition. And so a piece of that life cycle nutrition course was obviously preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, going through all those stages. And I was really, really into that. And when I was going to graduate, so my senior year, you have to do like a capstone or thesis project. Some people call it different things, but I did mine on the effects of caffeine during pregnancy. So then after graduating, the first year I graduated, after graduating, doing my internship, becoming a registered dietitian, passing all the exams and everything like that, I worked in a few different areas, but eventually started working at a clinic helping the same population. So pregnancy and breastfeeding, I did that for about 2 years until I decided to start my own business and do this on my own. And I just started seeing private clients on the side in the same space, pregnancy, women who were trying to conceive, pregnant, and also early postpartum as well. So yeah, I guess I've just always had an interest in it and always found it just super fascinating, and really, it's really cool to be able to help one person and also help another person, right? Typically helping multiple generations by just helping one person, it is really cool in the pregnancy space. And then secondfold, I also find that women are extra motivated during this time because they're either trying to conceive and want to be the healthiest they can be, or they're currently pregnant. And again, they have somebody else that they're responsible for. So they really want to do the best they possibly can during that time to make sure they're healthy and therefore baby is healthy too.
So you stated that, I'm not showing. You stated that for your thesis upon graduation, you wrote about caffeine and how it played a role in pregnancy and nutrition. So tell us a little bit about that, how exactly caffeine plays a role in pregnancy.
Yeah, so my research or my project was specifically on the effects of caffeine during pregnancy. So if you're trying to conceive, the recommendations are pretty similar. And I think that it might vary a little bit depending on your current use of caffeine, because if you're someone who drinks a lot of caffeine, maybe over 3 cups of coffee per day or something like that, it might be wise for you to start cutting back on the caffeine or replacing some of those coffee drinks with tea, because tea has less amount of caffeine. So yeah, I think it's nice. And I talk about this a lot on my page, is that the preconception period is such a great time to really focus on nutrition, prepare yourself so that when you do get pregnant, there's no like shock of like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Now I have to make all these changes and I have to, learn all this about nutrition. You kind of already did your work ahead of time in the preconception period. So you feel like ready, good to go, super confident in your nutrition and, food decisions. So during pregnancy, the effects of caffeine, essentially caffeine does cross the placenta and gets to baby. So that's why you see effects from high caffeine consumption. So that is usually seen at very high amounts of caffeine. So some studies will say, after 6 cups of coffee, some will say after 10 cups of coffee, you start to see these adverse effects like restricted growth during pregnancy or, problems with fetal heart rate and things like that. So that's why it's advised to keep it between 200 and 300 milligrams of caffeine during pregnancy, because that limit has showed the least amount of adverse side effects or no side effects at all. And this is going to vary person to person too, because a lot of times in the first trimester and sometimes beyond that, you have an aversion to caffeine. So I work with a lot of women who just don't want coffee anymore. Like they get into their first trimester and they're like, coffee just does not sound good. So I usually say 1 cup of coffee is about 100 milligrams of caffeine, but that is totally general. There's so many varieties of coffee out there that I always recommend, if you have a favorite caffeinated beverage, to actually go to a website I love called Caffeine Informer, where you can just type in the beverage and it'll pull up how much caffeine, an estimate of how much caffeine is in that beverage. So I always recommend kind of going there, checking your usual beverages out and making sure you're staying between that 200 to 300 milligram limit, which if you don't do coffee is very easy to stick to that limit. If you are someone who does drink coffee, then you do want to kind of be more cognizant about that.
Okay. That's awesome. I've never heard Caffeine Informer. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. So I know I've seen that question like plenty of times in the group, as far as like, especially the first trimester, because you're like so tired, you have no energy.
Yeah.
You're like, I just need like my Starbucks, a cup of coffee or what have you. But so we know coffee, of course, is one of the big ones as far as caffeine. What other items are we kind of missing? Or do we overlook that has the caffeine component? Because some people are just like, you know what, like I don't want to measure it. I don't want to, risk the baby at all. Let me just cut it out altogether. So what are some of the other things aside from coffee that we need to avoid?
Yeah, there's definitely caffeine in teas like green and black teas, white teas, oolong tea. Those all have caffeine as well. Sodas, so like Coke and, those types of drinks have caffeine as well. But typically, and what the research kind of says as well, is that with soda, when we're looking at soda consumption during pregnancy, the adverse effects are usually because of the sugar content of the sodas as opposed to the caffeine. So that might be a bigger issue there, which is really interesting. And then some other things are chocolate. So if you like hot chocolate or just regular chocolate, that has a small amount of caffeine. There are some medications that have caffeine. Energy drinks, definitely not a fan of those. So if you can avoid energy drinks altogether, that's definitely advisable. I'm not exactly sure on the caffeine content of energy drinks. I think there are some less than 200, but regardless, it's probably best practice to avoid energy drinks during pregnancy. What else? Medications. Some medications have caffeine in them. That's obviously something I'd run by your doctor and nurses and, care team.
Okay. So we're going to kind of shift a little bit, speaking about sodas and the nutrition side. So a lot of women are like, okay, well, I'll just get a caffeine-free drink. So, but it kind of sounds like caffeine-free, sugar-free, 0 calorie. But from a nutrition standpoint, is it recommended? Are those safe alternatives to use those as opposed to, not using those?
Yeah. So it's the caffeinated beverages. It kind of depends. I think that, it definitely depends on the drink, but when we're looking at like artificial sweeteners, so like a diet soda as opposed to a regular soda, artificial sweeteners, what I say is they're not toxic to baby, but they're not necessarily a baby building ingredient, if that makes sense. So it's not like having an occasional diet soda is going to harm the baby in any way. It's just not a drink that you would, want to be consuming on a regular basis. There's a lot of studies on artificial sweeteners and how they interfere with our gut microbiome. So just looking at how that affects pregnancy, because obviously gut health is really important for decreasing inflammation. And so that same thing goes in pregnancy too. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting research on that and like artificial sweeteners.
Okay. So can you just give some pointers as to, generally speaking, for nutrition and trying to conceive in pregnancy, what things should women be consuming from beverages and food?
Yeah, so obviously water, super important. There's plenty of other beverages though. Like if you're super bored of water, I get this question all the time. It's like, I can't drink any more water. What else can I drink? So like we were just mentioning, some teas are low in caffeine or have no caffeine at all and are safe during pregnancy. You can still have juice if you want juice. Smoothies are great. You can also drink like electrolyte beverages. Those are a little bit tricky because a lot of them are high in sugar, so you have to watch your sugar there. Milk, really, dairy milk and milk alternatives are typically all fine during pregnancy. So that hits on the fluids a bit. Food wise, I always say the same foods that are going to get you pregnant are going to keep you pregnant. So back again to that preconception diet, why focusing on nutrition when you're trying to conceive is so important, because if you can kind of nail that down before you do get pregnant, then you'll be smooth sailing. You'll know what to do. You'll have your routine set and it'll all be good. So what is that? That is healthy proteins. So quality, healthy proteins, well-rounded proteins that also contribute to healthy fats. Where I was going was like fish, so fatty fish. Salmon is great. In my book that I think we're going to talk about, I list like top 10 foods to include, and one of those is definitely salmon. Another group that is in there is definitely cruciferous vegetables like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, and also leafy greens like kale and spinach, and really any other leafy green is great too, arugula. Any leafy green that you like. I think that's important because a big thing my clients struggle with is getting in leafy greens, and that lends to folate intake because leafy greens are a high source of folate. So if you're kind of not hitting in that leafy green subcategory, you're probably not consuming enough folate. And another category I will say is nuts and seeds. So I really love chia seeds for pregnancy because they have a great balance of soluble and insoluble fiber, which is absolutely perfect for pregnancy. And they're also high in minerals that are needed in pregnancy as well. And then I'll also say, what is one thing that I missed? Oh, I was going to say citrus fruits like oranges, lemons, also berries are really great because they, again, have a great amount of fiber and can help keep you full and hopefully prevent things like constipation.
Okay. Okay, so I know what I found that helped me as far as the leafy greens, because that's really hard to get in.
It is.
But for the last couple of years, we've basically have been blending, like especially like kale. I like baby spinach, those kinds of things, and I kind of just mix a little bit of water in there, and just for flavor, we put orange juice in it.
Yeah.
So that's for me. That's what helps. If you can just drink like a glass, like a day, or even two, like in the morning or in the evening, I found that has helped me. I don't know. You know, you suggest that to people, but I have my little bullet, which I absolutely love. So I do
Makes
my
it
baby
easy.
food in that too. So, but yeah, I found that to be extremely helpful to kind of blend it. You kind of get like a good amount instead of having to kind of like stuff it from your plate.
Yeah.
So you had a testimonial on your website, which I loved. You worked with a woman who she stopped having her cycles or periods because she was doing some extreme and intense exercise.
Yeah.
And we've talked about in previously exercise, like intense exercise, not to do if you're trying to conceive, because it actually hinders you from conceiving. And this, when I read this, I was like, it's right there. Like, I'm right.
Yeah.
But she's getting ready for her wedding. And then you started working with her. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and what happened?
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting because I'm actually working with this same client currently. She's currently pregnant right now. She's about halfway through her pregnancy. So yeah, it's a really full circle and very exciting for her. But yeah, so she came to me and she had completely lost her cycle. She was working with a trainer who put her on this crazy training schedule, and the trainer was also giving her nutrition advice, which is against the law, actually. The trainer was not certified in nutrition, not a dietitian, nothing, but put her on this like super restrictive calorie plan too. So not only was she exercising super intensely, she was not eating near enough to be doing this intensive exercise either. So that caused her to lose her cycle. So basically what we had to work on was getting her up to a calorie amount that was sufficient to get her cycle to return, and including a lot of these foods that I just mentioned. So a lot of these healthy fats, because many of us, I think, are very stuck on the idea that we need to eat low-fat diets, which the science proves basically it's the complete opposite, especially for pregnancy. When we're thinking about pregnancy too, and so many nutrient needs increase, and I'm always thinking about this preconceptionally too, even when you're thinking about trying to conceive, in order to get fat soluble vitamins to be able your body to absorb those, you have to eat fat, right? So when we cut fat out of things, our body actually has a harder time at absorbing these nutrients. So for this client specifically, it was really reworking in those healthy fats, and figuring out where else we could increase her calories, because she was eating like, I can't even remember how much it was, but it was probably between like 1,200 and 1,400 calories, which was nowhere near enough, even if she wasn't doing that intense of an exercise routine. Let me make that clear too. So you can eat way more than that, even if you're not doing this crazy intense exercise routine. And she really needed that in order to get her cycle back. So not only that, it was kind of overall balancing her plate. So looking at, did she have an even distribution of those healthy fats, protein, and carbs all together? And then focusing on micronutrients as well. So, nutrients like iron and folate and choline and all these nutrients that are really important in those early stages of pregnancy.
I just find it always just amazing how our body reacts to just different things like stress.
Yeah.
And like you would never think, you're like, oh, I'm trying to be like so fit, especially for women who are like 40 and up, our population. It's kind of like, okay, let me just get really, really in shape. And you do too much, you actually hinder yourself from conceiving. So it's always interesting just to like kind of know those things. So yeah, thank you. I mean, it's awesome you're able to help her out. So we're going to move on to your business. Will you tell me what comes first? What came first? Was it the prenatal nutritionist, or the practice, or was it the cookbook?
The practice. So yeah, I started my practice part-time while I was still working at the clinic. So I was kind of building it up on the side while I was still working there. And then eventually I quit, and it's interesting. The timing was really, really perfect for me. Right about the time that I was going to quit my clinic job and just start running my business full time is when I got the book deal, and the publishing company reached out to me and wanted me to write this book that they had an idea for. So that is when the Feel-Good Pregnancy Cookbook came about. So about the time when I officially full-time launched into the prenatal nutritionist business is the same time that I started writing the book, which of course it didn't come out until later that year in 2019. But I started writing it back in like March of 2019. So, it's a bit of a process to write a book, and especially one with recipes and things like that. So that's what the book is structured like, a traditional cookbook, but in the beginning, it has nutrition information. It has those top 10 foods to focus on, kind of goes over trimester things, and then you kind of dive into the recipes. And the coolest thing I think about the book is that there's a symptoms index. So if you're going through nausea, or if you are in that preconception phase, or if you're having headaches or leg cramps or whatever symptom it is that you're kind of experiencing throughout your pregnancy, before or after, you can kind of look at that symptoms and then see recipes that fall under that symptoms that are essentially high in certain nutrients that can help out with that symptom. So that's a really cool part of the book.
That's awesome. So where did you get all this information? Did you already have the information from research like back previously before you started the book, or did it all come about while you were creating the cookbook?
Yeah. So throughout school, obviously going through nutrition and dietetics school, there's that's majority of my training. And then working in the clinic for 2 years with this population. I got a lot of training through the clinic and also just doing a lot of my own research, reading books and going to webinars and really just digging into the literature that's out there. There is, despite prenatal nutrition guidelines being really behind and really outdated, there is a lot of research out there on pregnancy nutrition and preconception and postpartum, and it just keeps building. So it's really interesting. And then the other part of that is, there is a whole lot of research out there, but it is very hard to study pregnant people because it's unethical. So most of the research isn't done in the United States because we have such strict guidelines on researching like vulnerable populations. So a lot of the research is done in different countries, which is fine. It still gives us the data that we need. And then a lot of the research is also just in animal models, because again, it's not ethical to, give a group of pregnant women a certain supplement and just say, hey, let's see what happens, Yeah, it's just not ethical to do that. And there's really no one who would sign up to be like, yeah, test me and my baby. So that's why it's hard to get data in general for pregnancy. But I guess my education came from a combination of all of those things.
So you were working with pregnant women on a day-to-day basis at your 9 to 5 job. So what made you transition to starting your private practice with the prenatal nutritionist?
I think to that point that I was just making about prenatal nutrition education that's like widely available and spread, I felt was just, for lack of a better word, very basic. It wasn't as in-depth as women are seeking out. So I quickly found when I started, getting traction with starting my own business and, growing a social media following, that people really, really wanted this information and they were having a hard time finding it because the information that they were finding online or at their providers, which most people got no information at their providers about nutrition, was just not sufficient for what they were actually searching for. And at the clinic that I was working for, I was very trapped in a box of what I could teach at that clinic. And so I just felt like I was limited there. And while I did feel like I was making a difference and I did see that every day, I realized that going virtual and having a business that was virtual, I could actually reach so many more people, and potentially across different countries, right? Now that we have social media and things like that, it's really cool because I get to even reach people in Australia and, the Netherlands and all of these places where I never thought it'd be possible that I can have reach to. So yeah, I think that coupled with just the idea of being my own boss, no limits on creativity, no limits on making my own schedule. All of those things definitely led me to just take the plunge in starting my own business.
That's great. So I can definitely relate to the point of our providers not giving us enough information. So my last pregnancy, I was officially diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And so for the very first time in my life, I went to a nutritionist. And what she said made so much sense as far as how carbohydrates and how proteins work and, how we can kind of regulate our sugars. I had no idea. So here it is. Both of my parents had type 2 diabetes. I had never heard that before. It's just kind of no carbs, no carbs, no carbs. Take everything white out. You know what I mean? Everything take out the potatoes, take out the rice, take out the bread. And I'm like, yeah, but I love all those. So, but just, learning how to pair certain items and foods together can definitely change how soon or how quick, the sugars get into your bloodstream. So that's great that you do it. So tell us a little bit about your programs at the Prenatal Nutritionist and the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
Yeah, so my main social media account is Instagram and my handle is at Prenatal Nutritionist. So definitely come see me on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page too, which I think you can find me by searching at Prenatal Nutritionist on Facebook as well. But I'm definitely more active on Instagram and then TikTok. If anyone's on TikTok, I'm on TikTok as well. And then The Prenatal Nutrition Library is my newest online resource. So back to my point of my goal being able to reach as many women as I possibly can with this nutrition information that so many women need. The goal of the Prenatal Nutrition Library was to make a more affordable resource that could reach more women, because working with me one-on-one, I don't accept insurance and it is a bit costly, and I am only one person, dietitian who's counseling. My team is growing, which is nice. But for me as an individual, I can only see so many people in a day before getting completely exhausted. So that's where the Prenatal Nutrition Library comes in, is that it is a membership community. So we actually have thousands of women who have gone through the library. Basically, again, second-fold reason why I created this is because I kept getting questions on social media of people saying, like, is there a website where I can go, where I can check if things are safe or not for pregnancy, where I can figure out how much of this nutrient I need, or, how to manage something like gestational diabetes, or how to manage my weight during pregnancy. So just a place where you could go to find all this information. And there just wasn't a website that I could recommend that I fully believed in and that actually had that vast of amount of information. So I was like, well, I guess I have to create it. So that's kind of how the Prenatal Nutrition Library got started. So you can either join as a monthly member or a yearly member. And what we do is we add new content every Monday based off of member suggestions. So we have topics from A to Z, everything under the sun related to prenatal nutrition. And we write based off of, what members want to see, because it's topics that, for me as a dietitian and my other dietitian who are writers and researchers in the library, there are things that we think you want to see, but then we get requests in and we're like, oh, I never would have thought people had questions about that. And so we're like, okay. So yeah, we want to write what you guys want to see. And then on top of that, there are meal plans. So we have meal plans for every trimester. And then we also have forums where you can connect. So there's one where you can connect with all the other women that are in the library. And then the other one is a questions forum. So I'm actually the one in the questions forum. I go in there every week and I answer people's questions. So a lot of people have, again, questions about the safety of certain foods, certain products, certain supplements, just getting tips on how to manage certain symptoms. So there are so many amazing questions in the forum. And the cool part about the forum too, or the whole library, is that the whole thing is searchable. So it's essentially like a searchable database of all of this information related to prenatal nutrition. And then you can connect with me too. So it's a really cool place. And that's called the prenatalnutritionlibrary.com if you're looking for more information about that.
That's awesome. So we do have a question that came in, and that was asking, are there certain foods that you can eat or a certain diet to help with PCOS? That you know
Definitely. So that's not my specialty. I don't really specialize in PCOS. I know a bunch of other dietitians that definitely do. So maybe I can send over some Instagram accounts. But yeah, diet and nutrition is a huge way to help manage PCOS. And, I think for that condition specifically, it's really important to have a team approach, like, different practitioners. Maybe you go see a dietitian, have your doctor, potentially have an endocrinologist to look at your hormones and things like that, maybe a naturopathic doctor as well. So I think it really takes a team approach to manage something like PCOS. But I do think nutrition is a huge component of management.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so you have some freebies for people who do
Yeah.
go visit your website. Again, just list the name of the website again and what you offer free to visitors who come by.
Yeah, so I have a free 5-day meal plan. And then I also have a free pregnancy grocery guide. And then my Instagram account, you can come follow me. I provide really valuable free information on @Prenatal Nutritionist on Instagram every single day. But yeah, I think we're going to link the free freebie guides in the show notes. So definitely grab those. They're really useful.
Absolutely. So that has been great information. Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
just starting everything. I know it's relatively new, but it seems like you've done a lot. And you have an absolute valuable information that you're offering to people. So
Thank
thank
you.
you again for joining us and sharing. So again, I will put all your information in the show notes. Go and visit again, website one more time.
The prenatalnutritionist.com.
And Instagram at the Prenatal Nutritionist.
At Prenatal
Okay.
Nutritionist.
Okay. All right. So we have everything there. If you guys have any questions after, if you're getting this on the replay, I can still see the questions. So if you want to send over a question and we can shoot them over to Ryan and help you out in any way that we can. But again, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to be in contact with you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.